escape, and today I'm going to be showing you a recent video I made where I cook let's call it my own secret pasta sauce recipe, because it's a recipe I've come up with through trial and error over the years, and I'm sure people have used very similar ingredients before, but to my knowledge I've never actually seen someone else put these ingredients together in exactly the same way. So I'm going to claim this particular dish as my own. It's a pasta sauce recipe, and it's very simple if you do want to follow along, or you can obviously just watch and listen and relax. ASMR is renowned for its relaxation and sleep-inducing properties, so if you're listening with headphones on whilst attempting to cook over a hot stove, do be careful, because obviously I don't want to be held responsible for any mishaps which may occur, or dozing off over a hot stove. So let's see how it goes. So on the screen here you can see some ingredients lined up, which I'm just going to talk you through here. From the left to the right, or the back left to the back right. Well, starting off, we have a jar of capers, which are actually a jar of pickled capers, and you often get these preserved in salt. Either way, in salt or pickled, I would recommend giving them a rinse in some fresh cold water before using them. And next we have some Italian chopped fine ripe tomatoes in a tin, and you don't have to get fine ripe. They just tend to be a little bit sweeter and more flavoursome. Sometimes if you just get the blander, cheaper tomatoes, they're fine, but you may need to add a little bit of sugar at the end of the cooking time. Next is some dried oregano or oregano, depending on whereabouts in the world you are, to how you pronounce oregano. You say oregano, I say oregano. There's a cue for a song there, isn't there? Next we have pasta. Plain durum wheat spaghetti. And front left, just kind of out of focus there, we have 2 cloves, just medium, normal sized cloves of garlic, and next to that, to the right of that, a tin of anchovies in olive oil. You'll also need some salt and pepper to season the dish with, although the capers and anchovies do contain quite a bit of salt, particularly the anchovies, so you may not need to add much additional salt to the dish. Obviously, you should taste. I say obviously. It's obvious if you cook for many years to keep tasting. That's going to be one of my first tips if I do continue showing you more cooking recipes or cooking videos, always taste your food before you serve it up, just to check for the seasoning. It's just something you do by habit, but if you're not used to doing much cooking, you may kind of overlook that and wonder why it doesn't taste quite right. So, where was I? We have some salt and pepper to add in, which is not shown there. Also, you'll need some olive oil just to sweat the garlic in at the beginning, and you'll also need a couple of saucepans, a large one for the pasta, depending how many people you're going to cook this for. This recipe is using a 400 gram tin of tomatoes, so the finished pasta sauce roughly feeds, I would say, 4 people. So if you're making it for 4 people, then you'll need to have a pan big enough to cook enough pasta for 4, and a smaller pan for cooking the actual pasta sauce itself, and something to rinse the capers in. A sharp knife, a chopping board, and a colander to drain the pasta. And that's that. So that's the ingredients, and I briefly just talked through the kit that you'll need to cook with. So let's get on to the videos of me actually preparing and cooking the dish itself. So, personally, I always start off making a nice clean space in the kitchen, on the kitchen workbenches to cook with. It just drives me crazy if the place is a mess beforehand. You may be the same, but that's just my personal preference. When I cook, just to have a nice clean tidy space, and after that I always start with sharpening a knife. If it's not been said before, a sharp knife is a safe knife, and it's a good thing to have a knife sharpening tool in the kitchen. And you can see here I'm just driving the knife kind of at a 45-degree angle down each side of the blade several times, just to get the blade nice and sharp. Just makes chopping, particularly things like carrots or onions, much safer. I just begin by giving the garlic a little press down on the chopping board with the flat side of the blade. What this does, it just kind of cracks the skin, so it makes it much easier to peel off the garlic in one piece. Then once you've taken the skin off, you can thinly slice through the garlic, like I'm doing here. If you're not used to using this particular chopping technique, just take it slow. And we just kind of scrape that clove to one side, crack the next one open, take the skin off, just cut the root off there, and just a quick tip on this technique: you want to get that lower knuckle just pressing against the flat side of the blade, just to protect your fingers, and you move it back as you slice through, thinly slice. It's kind of all done in one motion, but just go very slow if you're going to practice that technique for the first time. Then just to chop the garlic up even more finely, we kind of rock the fatter edge of the blade back and forth through the garlic, just chopping it more finely. And there we go, garlic nicely chopped. So next I'm just turning the heat source on, so in my case a gas stove here, and just get a saucepan ready with a nice glug of olive oil just to coat the bottom of the pan. I've not actually put the saucepan on the heat yet. There's a reason for this. We're actually going to be cooking garlic here to start with, and pretty much with all cooking of garlic you want to avoid burning it at all, so don't get the oil hot to start with when you cook garlic. So here I'm actually going to scrape the garlic into the cold oil and then put it on the heat, on a very gentle heat, and just sweat it down lightly. So here I'm just sweating the garlic down just for a couple of minutes, and you barely need to colour the garlic at all. Just cook it for a couple of minutes just to take the edge off, and it shouldn't really colour. Just a very gentle sizzle before we add the tin of tomatoes in, which are looking nice and luscious and deep dark red there. So next I'm just adding the herbs to the tomatoes there, probably about a teaspoon worth of oregano there, followed by a quick stir and a sprinkling of salt and a little dash of black pepper as well. So one final stir, and then on with the lid of the saucepan, and then I'm going to set a timer here for 20 minutes, and we just simmer the pasta sauce down and come back and check how it's doing in 20 minutes time. So while we leave the sauce to just simmer for 20 minutes, we can move on to preparing the other ingredients. So we have the rinsed capers here and the anchovies. So we put the capers and the anchovies side by side here on the chopping board, and just starting with the anchovies, chop those first. And then the capers. And then we kind of mix the two together and quickly, using the same motion that we did earlier with the garlic, rocking the knife back and forth through the capers and the anchovies at the same time, just kind of mushing the two together, so they're nicely mixed and chopped. So next we're going to move on to cooking the pasta, and I always start by just simmering a small amount of water in a saucepan to start with, before pouring some more boiling water on top, and also a good generous sprinkling of salt, or salty as the Mediterranean. I think I once heard some celebrity chef say about cooking pasta, or the water to cook pasta in. And this is just so the salt in the water can kind of penetrate the pasta as it cooks, just bringing out the flavour. So we can just watch a close-up of the water starting to simmer and bubble up and boil here. And I don't know about you, but to me it's just a thing of beauty, just watching those bubbles rise. So once the water's bubbling up nicely, you can then add the pasta, the spaghetti in this case, and you want to try to avoid snapping the spaghetti, just so you keep all the spaghetti at its full length. And the way I like to do this is just kind of holding the handful of spaghetti and gently pressing it into the water, just slowly lowering it in, and the ends that are in the water will start to soften. Then you can press and kind of curve it around until it all fits neatly into the pan. Just a little bit at a time. And once all the pasta is kind of bent in so it all submerges in the water, or at least nearly almost submerges in the water, you can then take a fork and press it down and just start to stir it. And by this time it should all have started to soften nicely. And then you kind of want to mix it up so it's not all clumped together in one big lump. Some people, and I completely disagree with this, some people recommend putting some oil into the water just to stop the pasta sticking. To me, this completely defeats the purpose of pasta, which is supposed to have a nice starchy, sticky outer coating, so when you drain it, the outside of the pasta is still nice and sticky, so the pasta sauce or the bolognese sticks to the pasta, and that really is the whole point. So I would avoid putting any olive oil into the water, just don't do that. So once the pasta's all submerged and mixed into the water, and the water's simmering away, you can then pop a lid on the saucepan and just set a timer for 5 minutes to come back and check the spaghetti then. So in the meantime, we're just going to go back to check the pasta sauce, which should have been cooking for about 20 minutes now, and I'm just sprinkling in a small pinch of sugar here, and this will depend on how sweet the tomatoes are, so you just want to taste as you go there. So next I'm just going to scrape in the anchovies and capers here, which have been chopped up previously, and just stir those in. And then, depending on just how thick the sauce already is, you can turn up the heat a little bit and just almost bring it to a boil, just to reduce and thicken the sauce to the type of consistency where it kind of coats the back of a spoon. So the 5-minute timer was just going off in the background there, and I'm just going to go back to check the pasta. For doneness, as a preference, I do prefer it a little bit hard in the middle, al dente, as the Italians call it, which I think translated means something like to the tooth. So one way to check the pasta is to just take a couple of strands out of the water with a fork, and just, you can test it in your fingers or taste it. It's going to be hot, so obviously give it a couple of seconds or blow on it. Well, there is the ancient, tried and trusted method of checking if pasta is done to perfection, which basically involves flinging it at a wall and seeing if it sticks. So once you're happy that the pasta is cooked to your liking, you can quickly drain it and set it to one side before going back to check on the pasta sauce. So the sauce should have been simmered down earlier, and one final taste here to check if it needs any further seasoning. And then we can get on to serving up the pasta and the sauce. Et voilà. As much pasta as you want, and a few spoonfuls of the sauce just ladled over the top. Et voila. Homemade pasta sauce with anchovies and capers, made by Snoozzee ASMR. Bon appetit. I hope you've enjoyed the video.